What's up, vinyl community? Thanks for coming by and hanging out. I want to talk about one of my favorite things tonight, which is the acoustic guitar. Let me ask you something. Do you remember the first time you heard Jimmy Page doing Black Mountainside on a Led Zeppelin record? Or do you remember the first time you heard Little Martha, the Allman Brothers tune, or Blackbird, the Beatles tune, or Hear My Train a Comin' by Jimi Hendrix? Um, there's something, how about the intro to Crazy on You by Heart on the debut record? You could tell she had been listening to her Steve Howe, and boy, wow, she just nails it. There's something about the sound of the acoustic guitar, and I fell in love with that sound when I was a young guy. I got a guitar just like everybody else did, and I'm kind of a strum, kind of a GCD kind of guy. I never learned how to flat pick. I never learned how to finger pick, and I am in awe of those people that know how to do it. But acoustic guitar is something. I mean, like think about when you go to see your favorite band, and they've got the electric guitars out and they're rocking, and but then they put those down, they reach for the acoustics. The crowd gets excited. We know what's coming, that acoustic set. We love that music. I love that music. I can't get enough of it sometimes when I'm in that mood. Sometimes I want it loud, and sometimes I want the feedback and that type, the distortion and all of that. But acoustic guitar is what we want to talk about tonight. So, that sound coming all the way forward throughout, well, it always seemed like the 70s rock bands, and later on, even some of the hair metal bands, and then later on, even with grunge music, is that it seems like the artist or the band would give you like one acoustic track, maybe two per record. Okay. And I always sought those out. They were always some of my favorites. So, like Alice in Chains had a whole EP, the Sap EP, which was mostly acoustic, and you had Pearl Jam with their second album had Daughter and Elderly Woman Behind the Counter in a Small Town, and then Soundgarden with Burden in My Hand. And although I have to say that my favorite acoustic Soundgarden related piece would have to be Chris Cornell doing Seasons on the Singles soundtrack. Man, that's just such a great song. But MTV Unplugged, right, was a big deal. So it was these big bands that stripped down and showed up with acoustic instruments, and they all did it. And Nirvana and Bob Dylan and the aforementioned Pearl Jam, and and those were, and Alice in Chains. Those were wonderful shows. And sometimes you can pick up things from those acoustic versions, that you didn't get from the original metallicized versions that had been released. So anyway, I want to talk for a moment about acoustic guitar records. When you're talking about all of those people that we talked about, whether it's Jimmy Page, or whether it's Eric Clapton, or whether it's Steve Howe, or whether it's Jimi Hendrix, when you read interviews with those guys, the records that I want to talk about tonight are the records that turned them on, that made them want to play the guitar, and to learn that lick, and to learn how to do that, and learn how to do that. I'm going to start with Django Reinhardt. And with each one of these, I'm going to give just a brief little history snippet. I know that everybody in the vinyl community knows who Django Reinhardt is, but I don't want to take it for granted that everyone watching this video does. And so just real quick, Django Reinhardt was born in Romania, the early 1900s, 1906, I think maybe, but I could be wrong on that. Family, wandering gypsies, they all played instruments. They all, music was a huge part of their life, and whether they were sitting around the campfire with a guitar, or a guitar banjo, or a fiddle, or an accordion, music was a big part of it. And Django certainly absorbed all of that as he was growing up. Django, I think, was given his first guitar banjo when he was like 5 or 6 years old, and so he could play. The cat could play. Had gotten married and had come back to the caravan, the basically the wagon that he shared with his wife, and I believe fell asleep with a cigarette and was burned very badly and lost. The heat was so hot that it curled the tendons in his hand, and he lost the mobility of everything but his thumb and these two fingers on his left hand. You, I had been listening to Django Reinhardt for years before I heard that or read that, because he plays like a madman beautifully, so articulate and so fast, and in a way that nobody had heard of before. Django Reinhardt formed the quintet of the Hot Club of France. Boy, that's a mouthful. With Stéphane Grappelli in 1934, and they were together through about 1943. And so most of these sides are that quintet or Stéphane Grappelli and Django Reinhardt together. But it's all on here. You've got Minor Swing, Dinah, Double Whiskey, Django's Tiger, Swing 42, The Sheik of Araby, Djangoology. It's just a fantastic record. And Django plays in that super fast, super percussive style that is just absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. So for a lot of players, it starts right here. For about the other 50%, it starts right here. Robert Johnson, King of the Delta Blues. Flash in the pan, right? You guys know the story, Robert Johnson. I'm not sure if you can see the poster back there, but Robert Johnson recorded twice. Once in San Antonio in 1936, another time in Deep Ellum, Texas, right outside of Dallas, or inside of Dallas, however you want to look at it. In 1937, he recorded 31 songs, and that's it. I think most of you guys have seen this record or know this record. By 1938, Robert Johnson, and of course the story was that he had gone down to the crossroads, had sold his soul to the devil for guitar playing prowess and fame and fortune. Boy, if that's the case, he got the wrong end of the deal on the fame and fortune, because it wasn't until he was long dead that he was made famous or infamous, depending on how you want to look at it. But anyway, by 1938, just a couple of years after he had recorded, these sides had made him so popular and so word of mouth and so well known and so famous that John Hammond was seeking Robert Johnson out in 1938 for his Swings to Spiritual concert. And couldn't find him, and found out just a few weeks before the show opened that Robert Johnson was dead, had been killed by a jealous girlfriend or a jealous husband or a jealous boyfriend, depending on what story you read, but 21 years old and gone. So all we're left with are these 31 songs. But these 31 songs, whether it's Love in Vain or Crossroad Blues or Terraplane Blues, Come On in My Kitchen, 3220 Blues, Milk Cow Calf Blues, Traveling Riverside Blues. I mean, every one of them, the technical proficiency is there, the just that haunting delivery of the vocals. And, the thing about these records, Django Reinhardt, Robert Johnson, some of the other people that we're going to talk about, these record companies didn't have a ton of money, so it wasn't, hey, do 15 takes and we'll pick the one that we like the best, or hey, I love that take except for that one flat note, but that's okay, we can fix that, or we can overdub that, or whatever. Now, that wasn't the case with any of this. I mean, you had a guitar and a singer, or an instrument that was mic'd, and you didn't make a mistake. If you did, so the idea that all of this music, just about all of this music, was recorded in one or two, maybe three takes at most, is incredible. The fact that all we have of Robert Johnson is those 31 songs, and yet we're still talking about him, is incredible. But I put this on again just the other night to see if it's as big a deal as it's talked about, and it is. It's spine-tinglingly good. So Robert Johnson, king of the Delta Blues, baby. Next up, I'd have to talk about John Fahey, and I'm going to detour for a moment. Let's talk about the transfiguration of Blind Joe Death. John Fahey, drony, raga, very strong plucking sound, very primitive guitar sounds, and as a matter of fact, is kind of the father of the primitive acoustic guitar. Kind of a quirky character, but founded Tacoma Records so that he'd have a place to record after his first couple of recordings did pretty good. But this is the one that most people go back to, Blind Joe Death, and this influenced so many guitar players. I want to show, this is a Fahey record, Fair Forward Voyagers, Soldier's Choice. And this is kind of what you could expect from a Fahey record. So you've got a really cool, interesting cover. But let me show you this Tacoma label because I think it's just beautiful. I think there's something about it that's just lovely. Look at that. So John Fahey, and there's so many good videos, so many different things to look up of John Fahey. There's one where, and I forget the name of the lady that's interviewing him, but he's on her show and she's talking to him and he lights a cigarette because everybody smoked back then, right? He lights a cigarette, doesn't have an ashtray, flips his guitar over and just uses the sound hole of his guitar. So, I mean, he never takes things too seriously, but he's a brilliant guitar player. This is John Fahey, Leo Kottke, and Peter Lang. So this was the record that I picked up because I was into John Fahey. And the next thing I know, I was really into Leo Kottke. Leo Kottke, a little bit more accessible, but still kind of quirky. Was picked up and recorded also on the Tacoma label, on Fahey's Tacoma label. But you know, sometimes you don't really develop an affinity for someone until you see them. And I saw Leo Kottke. I saw him play at Port Evans Pub in Dallas. It was so crazy. Lyle Lovett opened up for him with a bongo player. It was just Lyle on guitar, and he had a bongo player. And then Leo came out, and he had a guitar case. He pops it open. He pulls out a 12-string guitar. The end of it had been sawn off. And he said, I was going to play my 12-string guitar tonight, but it wouldn't fit in the case, so I had to saw the end of it off, and this is my 10-string guitar. But anyway, of course, he had other guitars. I get that was the shtick for the night, I guess. But man, he melted it, and he blew my mind. And he played, and I got to see him from 5-6 feet away, and I just couldn't believe that someone could play with that type of strength and precision and beauty all at the same time. But this is Leo Kottke's 6 and 12-string guitar. This is a fantastic record. It never takes itself too seriously, but the technical proficiency on it is absolutely amazing. If you get a chance, you don't know Leo Kottke, find out about Leo Kottke. Sometime in the mid-90s, I believe it was, Leo developed carpal tunnel in his left hand. And basically had to stop playing for a while and then had to really reteach himself how to play the guitar. And so there for a while, what he played wasn't quite as ambitious, wasn't quite as energetic. There for a while, his music almost took on kind of a new agey Windham Hill type feel, but it was still absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. Fortunately for us, Leo is still touring, and he's back to tearing it up. So if you get a chance to go see him, check him out. This is Ice Water, just another one of his seminal records. It's fantastic. If you get a chance, check this out. If you're a burgeoning, beginning acoustic guitar player, you've got to check this out. So real quick from across the pond, you got to talk about the Pentangle. Paid a whopping 50 cents for this one back in the day. Pentangle with both Bert Jansch and John Renbourn. What a fantastic band. Of course, you know, at the same time you had Fairport Convention and and also the incredible string band, all kind of doing kind of the same type of thing. But you didn't get, in my opinion, the acoustic percussive roundness of Danny Thompson on double bass, John Renbourn, and Bert Jansch on guitar. What you get from Pentangle. Well, this is a wonderful record. I love Way Behind the Sun, but this also has waltz on it, which is an instrumental. It's one that you can really test your equipment out on. It sounds fantastic. Crank it, turn it up and crank it. I wanted to show this one too. This is Sweet Child, Pentangle also. And I wanted to show this one because this one has photos, and there's Bert. I'm in it for the beer, I believe is what he says. And then over here is John Renbourn, who says, and I think he says in the quote that he started out trying to play like Big Bill Broonzy, and he still was. But these guys, acoustic guitar masters, beautiful sounds, just really good stuff. And by the way, we started off talking about Jimmy Page with Black Mountainside. That is actually not adapted from, but not credited to Bert Jansch and his song Down by Blackwater Side. Okay. And Al Stewart, who is another one of my favorite guitar players, along with Peter White, a guy that recorded with them quite a bit. Al Stewart, who at one time was England's answer to Bob Dylan, was a Bert Jansch acolyte and would follow him from show to show to show. And Bert taught him Blackwater Side, and Al Stewart taught it to Jimmy Page when Jimmy Page was there to play on one of Al's first records. And Jimmy Page took it, changed it up a little bit, and called it Black Mountainside. So there you go. There's the circle. I can't talk about acoustic guitar from across the pond without talking about Nick Drake. And this is my favorite of the 3 Nick Drake records. This is Five Leaves Left, and I love this record. I love his playing on it. So articulate, so clean, so powerful, so beautiful. But I also love Danny Thompson's bass on it as well. Just absolutely beautiful. I'd say my favorite track on this is Man in the Shed. But, I mean, listen, Cello Song, Fruit Tree, Way Too Blue, and even Riverman, which, you know, is more of a piano-driven tune, but I love that record. And Nick's playing on this is absolutely beautiful throughout. Poor Nick Drake. I wish we could have gotten more Nick Drake music. That's another story. This is also produced by Joe Boyd. That's another story. So we'll save those for later. So last but not least in this type of genre, I want to switch gears a little bit, talk about Doc Watson. Doc Watson is just absolutely one of my favorite guitar players ever. He's maybe not the most technically proficient, but he's just got a wonderful sound, and you can immediately tell that it's him. This isn't the sexiest album cover in the world, but it's one of my favorite Doc Watson records. This is Doc and Merle picking the blues. Merle Watson, his son, who died tragically not too long after this record was made in a really bad tractor accident. But this record is them playing acoustic blues, Freight Train Blues, St. Louis Blues, Mississippi Heavy Water Blues. This is one of my favorites. Also features Sam Bush, primarily on fiddle, but also a little bit of mandolin. But Doc Watson is just a treasure trove. And if you don't know Doc Watson, I don't care if you've been playing for a day or 25 years, if you don't know Doc Watson, do yourself a favor, pick up any one of his records. What we're listening to in the background is the Watson Family CD, and it's about 26 songs that go way, way, way back to when Doc was a teenager picking on the front porch. All right, I want to bring things into the future a little bit, and I can talk about this literally. I mean, I kept pulling CDs and albums, and I was like, Mark, stop, narrow it down, stop, talk about the stuff you love and get in and get out there. People don't want to hear you talk that long. This is I'm the Resurrection. This is a wonderful comp. This is John Fahey right there, and this is artists that were inspired by his playing to play a certain way or sound a certain way or to play the guitar in general. And this has the Fruit Bats, who I've grown to love. It's got a band called Pelt, which I love the song that's on here. I haven't loved everything else that I've heard of theirs, but I'm still digging a little bit. Sufjan Stevens, Devendra Banhart's on this. Jason Little of the I'll come back to it. Also, Calexico, Lee Ronaldo, Sonic Youth is on it. M. Ward, Peter Case, and Hal Gelb. This is a wonderful record, and if you haven't heard it, check it out. These songs, kind of a modern day version, modern day take on John Fahey. Okay, next up, M. Ward, End of Amnesia. I've known people that could kind of take him or leave him. I know people that love M. Ward, his work with She and Him, but this is him solo. Wonderful guitar player. I love his creakiness and his leatheriness, and the way that he goes back to post-war and pre-war, and all types of elements running through his music, and I dig it. This is End of Amnesia. This is a wonderful record. This just came out a couple of years ago, was repressed, but all of his records are really good, and most of them can still be picked up pretty easily. We've talked about Calexico, and we've talked about this record before. This is Spoke. This is their first record. When it first came out, Calexico wasn't on it. And so it was a little bit confusing. It was just called Spoke, and they didn't know if that was the band name or the record name. It was supposed to actually be both, but then they found out that there was another band called Spoke, and so they named themselves Calexico after a town that borders California and Mexico. But this is a wonderful acoustic record. It's not all acoustic. There are some electric instrumentation on here as well, but for the most part, it's acoustic, and it's dirgy, and it's sometimes slightly out of tune, and just has that kind of metallic, just killer bluesy sound that I'm sure that they picked up and fell in love with from some of the other records that we talked about in the pile. So Calexico definitely gets an honorable mention on this acoustic video. And then Hal Gelb, and we've talked about Hal Gelb, we've talked about Aligrius. I can't talk about it enough. If you want flamenco guitar, authentic, really well played flamenco guitar, this is the record. This is Hal Gelb going across to Spain, playing with the Band of Gypsies, and recording some of the most beautiful music. Cowboy Boots on Cobblestone. Wonderful, wonderful record. Fantastic guitar. I want to talk real quick about Caliphone. This is their debut record, Room Sound. Caliphone is Tim Rudley's band. Tim formed Caliphone as a solo project when his band Red Meat kind of imploded. This is anything but Red Meat. While that sound was more electronic and abrasive, blues rock with some punk elements thrown in, this is more of a lo-fi affair. The sound of down and dirty acoustic blues guitar with a few little electronic bleeps and some other sounds mixed in. It's low-key, it's laid back, it's funky, it's bluesy, it's swampy. Caliphone is one of those bands that are really hard for you to pigeonhole. They just don't sound like anybody but them. Tim Ridley has a wonderful little, he's got a wonderful, he's kind of a slightly raspy voice and delivery, very low-key. But anyway, just wonderful, wonderful music. And if you don't know Caliphone, that's something definitely to check out. Lastly, Billy Strings. A buddy of mine kept talking about Billy Strings. My buddy Bobby kept talking about Billy Strings. I thought, there's no way Billy Strings. I did the same thing with the Drive-By Truckers. A buddy of mine gave me a Drive-By Truckers video, DVD, CD. I threw it on my coffee table. It sat there for a year. I didn't listen to it because I didn't take their name seriously. And wow, when I did finally listen to that record, they became my favorite band for the next 2 years, and now I own every record they've made. Billy Strings, I just didn't take him seriously. I should have. Billy Strings is a purist with a psychedelic heart. He really is. He's kind of like Sturgill Simpson in that way. Learned acoustic guitar at his daddy's knee, and absorbing the sounds of the music that his daddy would listen to, Hank Williams and Merle Travis and that type of thing. And Billy picked up a guitar pretty early on and became a child prodigy. This is his record, Home. It's a wonderful little acoustic psychedelic masterpiece. It absolutely is. And he really is kind of a prodigy. You're going to hear Django Reinhardt-isms on this record. You're going to hear Robert Johnson-isms on this record. But you're also going to hear touches of like Tony Rice and Pat Flynn and other flat pick guitarists that will just absolutely amaze you. So Billy Strings. And then real quick, we got an honorable mention. It seems like in like 85, 86, about the time that the Pickin' the Blues record, Doc Watson and Merle, Rounder Records and Flying Fish Records started really putting out some quality acoustic music, and they would put out these comps, these samplers. One of the first ones that I got was the Rounder Folk 2, and I can't find it. I wanted to show it to you so bad tonight, but it had a Tony Rice track on it. It had a Bela Fleck track on it. I think it had a David Grisman track on it. And it was really what kind of opened me up to bluegrass. And I picked that record up because I saw the similarities between Rounder and Flying Fish, because the Doc Watson record is on Flying Fish. So pick this up. This has got John Fahey, Hazel Dickens, Pentangle, the Whitstein brothers, Bob Brosman, Mimi Farina, Norman Blake, the great Norman Blake. So this is a wonderful thing to pick up if you just want to kind of dip your toes into bluegrass style flat picking and guitar. And then this is another one. This is the new acoustic music sampler. This is also on Rounder Records. This has Mark O'Connor and Tony Trischka, Bela Fleck, Rob Wasserman, Norman Blake, Jerry Douglas. I mean, everybody, all those cats that you know of that played on all of those great records. So there you go. From jazz to blues to rock to bluegrass. Acoustic guitar, man. One of the most wonderful and joyous instruments. Pick it up, take it to the beach, take it to the campfire, or just put on a record of somebody that can play really well and enjoy it that way. But there you go. Acoustic music, acoustic guitar. Y'all go have some fun. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.